Hello again. Today's subject, the game of Go. Let me first clarify that if you're here looking for a Go problem involving the game of Go, wrong video. Consider context. This channel is usually focused on carpentry and crafting and things like that. The problem here is the board itself. Also, this is not a how to repair a Go board video. It's a how do you repair a Go board video. I want to ask your advice, and I want to proceed with caution because it's kind of expensive and I want to take the board seriously. So I'll show you a little bit about it and we'll discuss ways that we could potentially make it better. So the subject is really the Go board and its equipment and maintenance and repair, keeping in mind a, well, DIY slash construction point of view. Unless this is your first time visiting one of my channels, then you already know that I love games, especially two-player zero-sum games, and just game theory in general. So I couldn't pass this up. I just got it, you won't believe for how much, and I had to have it. It's a solid board. The stones themselves are, yes, that is actually shell, and yes, the black ones are actually slate, exactly as tradition prefers. Go is probably the oldest game ever. It's at least 2,500 years old, and the equipment that you see here is probably very similar to what's been going on for those countless hundreds of years. So it's a territory game. What's similar? I don't know. There's all sorts of similar things, but they're all derivative of Go. Go is the progenitor. Okay, so what is the point? Let's say that you're white. You want to surround black in this sort of way to reduce its liberties. And then once all of its liberties are gone, then it's trapped. Black is trapped and you occupy its territory, you capture their pieces. So it's a territory game. And that short overview is all I'm going to say on the subject of playing it. Don't pick at the details of how I explained it because the subject is really the equipment. Okay, bowls for your Go stones. Nice little hand turn things. Not bad, right? Usually when the stones that you capture, you put in here. What do I do? So far, I'm considering that I should probably sand it down a little bit, just mildly, and I'm thinking shellac. How can I tell if it's shellac? What makes me think it's shellac? Just the appearance and the kind of water spot-like look that it has here. But I'm going to test it with alcohol. If denatured alcohol puts a streak on it, then it's more than likely shellac, because shellac is cut with alcohol. So it always remains, it will always be vulnerable or susceptible to alcohol, no matter how old or no matter how long it's been on there, because alcohol is the solvent that cuts it. So let's find out in real time. This is denatured alcohol. I'm being very careful not to splash it on anything else until I know what this is. Wow, okay. It didn't seem to have any effect at all. What do I do now? Well, the alcohol doesn't seem to be breaking down the finish at all, and in fact it's just doing a nice job of cleaning it. So, what do? Well, I suppose I can clean the whole thing with alcohol. It seems safe to do so. And that in itself will be an improvement. But I still want to determine what type of finish this is, or at least what type of finish can be applied over top of it without damage. So the next thing that I'll test... Look at those water spots, they kind of disappear. Maybe it is moving the shellac around. This is a tough game. That's why I'm not going to present this as a how-to video, because I'm uncertain, and I would rather consult with other people that may know than to just sit here and pretend to be an expert. I do have experience with lots of wood things, and I do have experience with lots of different finishes, but we're always in a process of learning. You never know everything. To believe that you do is just arrogance and stupidity. So I'll show you a close-up of me knocking down some of these water spots, and then why don't you share with me your opinion? According to the previous owner of this set, it came from Japan in the mid-20th century. Shellac dries really quickly. So if it has been spread around, as soon as the solvent dries, it should be done moving. If you've never worked with shellac, it's different. It's very different from most finishes. So where did I get the set? Believe it or not, Craigslist for $10. What? Yep, I'm not even kidding. $10. And that is for both bowls, all the stones, which a couple are missing. There's something like 175 of each. But the stones really are the ones that you're supposed to use. You're not supposed to use anything. It's just that these are some of the most desirable stones are made from slate and shell, and I'll give you a better close-up of those under better lighting conditions in a moment. But it's quite a find if you're familiar with Go equipment. I'm having second thoughts. I'm starting to think that it really might be shellac, and that the water stains are just deep down enough that they're under the shellac and into the wood, and that's why I can't really fix it this way very easily. Now, alcohol is damaging to the shellac if that's the case, but I can restore it. So what's my evidence? For one, it has a smell that's characteristic of shellac. It kind of reminds me of honey. But also, I think it's consistent with the period, and it would probably be desirable for something like this, a presumably tourist set. There were probably at the time a lot of Americans in Japan that want to bring home a Go board, and it's not that it's low quality, it's that it's kind of optimized for production, for efficiency. But wait until you see the joinery underneath. And I haven't got to the... There's still some problems associated with this set that I want to discuss with you, but let me finish cleaning the bowls and then I'll get back. Okay, at this point I'm really starting to believe that this is shellac. Again, my evidence is that honey-like characteristic smell, and the fact that I was able to rub some of the milder water spots away suggests that the shellac is moving around a bit. And there's another thing. With the application of alcohol, it starts to get a little tacky, kind of like a little sticky, and that suggests that the solvent is attacking the finish. But let me know what you think. That's as far as I'm taking this for now. The beauty of shellac is you can always apply more over top of it, so no damage has been done. The first rule here is do no harm. I'm moving into this cautiously. Let's discuss the stones for a bit. As you already know, I'm comfortable with wood, but with foreign things like this, I mean shell and slate, I'm out of my depth. I've worked with some minerals occasionally. Slate is not that foreign to me, but the shells, I've already taken the time to look up what I should do, and so far what I'm thinking is that I'm going to soak them in lukewarm water with a little bit of dish soap. And after that, I think what I'm going to do, rinse them, make sure they're dry, and the black ones I'll give a coat of mineral oil. I think that's relatively harmless. Right now, I'm uncertain about what to do with the shell ones. So if you know better, please let me know and provide evidence. Don't just say, just spray paint them. No, I need evidence. I think it might be possible to clean these stones, the white ones rather, the shell stones, with some peroxide, like hydrogen peroxide, the stuff that comes in the brown bottle. I think I can soak them overnight, and that should get them a little bit brighter. They're pretty bright as it is. Here, if I lower the exposure, you can see them a little bit better. Maybe that gives you a better idea of what they look like. It's kind of hard to capture white things on video. And somewhat tragically, there's probably about a half dozen of them that have been chipped. I think that's par for the course with this. It lends itself to authenticity and to the credibility of its age, and to the authenticity of its materials. Those of you who already know about this know that these are very expensive, so excuse me for being somewhat careless with them. I'm not completely destructive. I'm pretty careful for the most part, but just as a matter of observation and opinion, I like the way those feel better. And so with my isopath stones, this is the material I'm using for black. This is not the material I'll be using for white. Real quick, this is isopath, these are the stones. And of course I'll put a link about this game at the end of this video. If you like Go or chess, then I suggest you try it. And in case you're wondering, these are approximately 22 millimeters. And how thick are they? Black is averaging around 5, and white is averaging around 4. There's also some variance in the width, with black being just a little bit wider on average, and supposedly this is to compensate for the optical illusion that causes white to appear larger. Alright, I've discussed the bowls and the stones. Next up, let's discuss the problems with the board. The first thing that jumped up to bite me about this is the damage. It looks like, I don't know, like puppy damage or something. Wood filler, I don't want to use wood filler to fix that. I'm thinking more along the lines of removing some of the material. The surface isn't too bad, but there is a gouge or two. So if I were to plane this down, then I would have to repaint the grid, and that is a sizable task. So your reaction is probably like, Pocket, what are you talking about? Planing it down, repainting the grid? That's craziness, man. Yeah, you're right, it is. But it's an expensive thing. I mean, these are valuable. And look, oh my goodness, it's way out of true. I mean, from corner to corner, it's probably something like a half. Let's find out. Oh, yeah, that's just unacceptable. My need for perfection just can't handle that sort of. Oh. Okay. Planing it is a big deal. But at least getting the feet off isn't a problem. I'll show you that in a moment. Repainting the grid is a big deal. But taking a little bit of material off of each side, not so bad. Planing the underside wouldn't be too problematic, but I don't think it's necessary. I think there are easier ways to go about it. So you might be thinking, what about this? Now, as you probably already know, anything with 4 legs has a redundant point on a plane, so it will always rock unless it's nearly flawless. True. And further, it doesn't really matter what the underside is like because it's not really visible enough during gameplay to matter. Isn't that beautiful? I wonder if it's the signature of the artist. But instead of planing the bottom, another solution that would be much easier would just be to remove a little bit of material from one of these. I mean, we're dealing with a very, very small amount here. Another solution that's even easier yet, since we're already so close, I think the weight has naturally caused it to stabilize in a general plane. But another solution would just be to use some felt pads, thick felt pads. Then we can concern ourselves with keeping our truing process up here on the top where it actually matters. At this point, I want to show you what I think is the biggest problem with this board. This dimension is wider than this dimension. So this way, the stones space out just fine. It's perfect. The problem is in this direction. Okay, so look. It gains, it gains, it gains, it gains, and then right there, we have completely added another piece. The stone is just slightly wider than the cell. So you gain a little bit each time, and by the time you've gone across half the board, you've lapped it. What do I do? Okay, so I could wipe the grid and reduce the grid, but then it will no longer be a 19 by 19 board. Pause that thought for a second. There aren't actually 19 squares because it's 18 squares because you play on the grid. You don't play in the cell, you play on the grid. So 18 squares actually has 19 intersections. I don't know if I said that right, but think about it and you'll work that out. I suspect that the board has shrunk along this axis, become smaller. And unfortunately, I don't have a board stretcher to put it back the way it was. This is a pretty serious problem. It's enough to make gameplay annoying. And I'm really not sure what I'm supposed to do. Right now I'm thinking you have to... Right now I can't find a solution to the problem. I'm thinking that I have to separate the stones from the board. I don't think they can be made to fit with each other. Not without reshaping all of the stones, which I really, really wouldn't want to go through that. If you have any suggestions on this topic, please open discussion. I am at a loss at the moment. In order to make the grid larger, I would have to reduce the number of squares, and then it would no longer be a 19 by 19 board. The only other available option is to reduce the size of the stones, but there's no way I'm doing that much work. But would it be that much work? I mean, could I make like a jig or something? Maybe something that would sand each of the pieces by just removing a little half of a millimeter all the way around. Would that devalue the pieces too much? Here's another problem with planing it. I don't have a plane large enough. My planer is only 13 inches. I say only sarcastically because 13 inches is pretty big. But this thing is a beast. It's almost 16 inches in this dimension and 17 and 5/8 in this dimension, which leads me to another point of interest. Go boards are supposed to be different from one side to the other to compensate for the spatial illusion from perspective that causes the board to stretch out towards its infinite apex, its vanishing point. So when you're sitting at the Go board, it's easier to see whenever it's when you're on the side that compensates for that. That said, there's still shrinkage involved. Look at this. This is a solid slab. And even though it's something like, I don't know, 70 years old, it's finally just now stabilized to its climate. So now is a good time to flatten it and bring it back to where it belongs. Now the planing is definitely a problem because I'll have to bring it to somebody, but I do know someone that has a plane that large. He'll probably frown at me asking him to do it, but I think I can twist his arm. But I'm not sure that I want to go that far. I want to bring up to you non-wood people, I want to mention just what a big deal such a thick board is. I mean, I already gave you the dimensions. That is a huge single-piece board. Most of my wood in my selection, it varies from something like 7/8 from the stuff that I get from the guy that mills it to maybe in its thickest form 2.5 inches. According to him, anything thicker than that just is far too likely to split, so he doesn't bother with it. That means split during the drying process. As moisture leaves the wood, it shrinks, and it's a bit of an art to get it so that it leaves in a uniform manner so that it doesn't split, like in the case of this big thick log. So something like this that is 16 by 18 by 3.5 or something like that is a big deal. That's hard to come by. Therefore, I want to invest the right amount of effort into this to balance with its value. So let me know what you think I should do. How should I proceed? I want it to be beautiful, but I wasn't ready to take on this project right now. I'm busy with other things. The thing is that I found it and I couldn't pass it up. Luck equals preparedness plus opportunity, and the opportunity came. I had to move. I had to get it. What do I do with this problem? Oh, yeah. Check this out. That's easy enough to repair. I think I'll just wrap this in a moist towel overnight, and that should swell the wood back up enough that I can pound it back in place, and it should be firmly set. I'm not going to use glue. I think it's lovely that the tight fit holds it together. And I'm absolutely leaving those shavings in there. I think history is a thing of beauty. Just imagine that old Japanese shop, something like 80 or 90 years ago, or who knows. Some old-timey shop with his old school tools and techniques. Man, he would have been something to behold, huh? Or she. One thing that I also have to consider about this project is the amount of sanding. These 4 legs will take forever ever to sand to get them beautiful again. But after some shellac, should I decide that's how I should proceed, it would be beautiful. I also think a drying oil would look lovely, but you already know that that's my favorite. Okay, this has been long enough. Thank you for joining me. I hope this was interesting to you for one reason or another. I hope I also, if you weren't familiar with Go, I hope I introduced you to something new. And if you were familiar with Go, and if you were familiar with Go, but you're not so familiar with the woodworking aspect of games like this, I hope that I've brought you to a place of insight or appreciation on that topic. So, I don't have time right now to start refinishing this, but it's something that I intend to do in the future. One way or another, I will make improvements, and when the day comes, I should have a video. So this has been long enough. Thank you for joining me. See ya. So you can make fun of me now because I have a better Go board, but this was my last one. How did I make it? I just set the table saw really, really shallow, and then made a series of cuts every inch or something. It's a 13 by 13 board. Hey, it works to play, right? It's just a piece of plywood. The Go bowls, I made a video about this on my main channel, about how to make coconut Go bowls. And the pieces are just gems. They're $1 at the craft store. And take a look at this. Now I can consider this finished. All I did was coat it with flat black spray paint, and then I used a paper towel that was covered in mineral spirits to rub it off the flat parts, and it sunk in to the cracks. Now I think I can consider this a respectable Go board, and it costs virtually nothing. Alright, see you next time.